Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second of our webinars on prostate progress, our new patient data platform. My name is David James. I'm the Director of Patient Projects and Influencing at Prostate Cancer Research. Now, it's my pleasure to welcome you all today to the second of 3 webinars on prostate progress. And if anyone missed last week's webinar, it can be found on our website and on our YouTube channel. And more details of where you can see that can be found later on. And just a reminder, this webinar is being recorded so that we can make this available to anyone who was unable to attend today's session. So today's session is going to focus on the benefits and risks of taking part in prostate progress, with a particular focus on how we ensure that we keep your data safe and your identity unknown. We're going to be joined by 3 different speakers today. Henry, who has prostate cancer and has been heavily involved in the setup and oversight of prostate progress. Marcus Cumberbatch, who is a urologist from Sheffield. We're talking about the importance of prostate progress from the perspective of a doctor. And Pauline Bagnall, who's a prostate cancer clinical nurse specialist, and she'll be giving her perspective on the importance of prostate progress from a clinical nurse specialist. Now, there'll be an opportunity for questions at the end. So if you do have any questions, please write them in the Q&A box, and we will endeavor to get around to as many of them as we can at the end. So just wanted to do a quick reminder for all of you who are on today's webinar about who is actually behind prostate progress. And that's the charity Prostate Cancer Research, or PCR. So for those of you who don't know us, PCR, we're a research and information provision charity that is dedicated to improving and saving lives of people with prostate cancer. And patients are really central to everything we do and drive our work. And our work is focused on really 4 key areas. So number 1, is we fund novel and innovative academic and social research projects at world-leading institutions that are working towards the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of advanced prostate cancer, and also delivering better quality of life outcomes for patients. Now, we ensure that this research is targeted to address patient need and research gaps to really maximize our impact and ensure that better treatments reach patients sooner. We have a translational research arm known as Proven Connect, which focuses on ensuring more promising treatments can come out of the lab. So successful academic research that gets in the lab, how we get that out of the lab and into patients. And that's really about bridging that gap between patients, between industry, between investors and health providers. And that's the incredible work that the team who look after our translational research do. But we also know that research alone is not enough to achieve our vision. And so we involve, educate, and empower people affected by prostate cancer to enable them to play a more active role in driving forwards change in research, treatment, and care. And we also look to provide better patient information to support patients make more informed decisions along their own treatment journey. Finally, we seek to ensure greater equity of treatment and parity of care. You see, we're working towards a world where no man is left behind, where prostate cancer is caught early, and those who are diagnosed can hopefully be cured. So these are the objectives of today's session. And by the end of the session, the hope is that you will know all about the potential benefits and risks of taking part in prostate progress, the role that patients have played in the development, governance, and oversight of prostate progress, the measures that we take to safeguard your data, and the actual what that process actually looks like, a process called depersonalization, how that actually works to protect an individual's identity. So just a quick recap on what prostate progress is, for those of you, just a refresher as a reminder. So prostate progress brings together both your health data and your personal experience data in one place. And the reason for this is it's about making it easier for your healthcare team and also researchers to assess the full picture of your health, well-being, and your quality of life. Now, the NHS, it holds clinical data about all of us, connected by our NHS number. And as a prostate cancer patient, this includes things like your biopsy results or PSA tests, any treatments or drugs you might be on to treat your prostate cancer. But what the NHS doesn't hold is your personal experience data. And so that's really about the impact that living with this disease really has on your quality of life. Things like any erectile dysfunction that you might be having caused by treatment. What that really actually means to you, how does it affect your mood and well-being? How much does that bother you or not? We know it's different for different people. And we capture this data via simple questionnaires that you will complete on prostate progress. And then what we do is we link up this personal experience data from these questionnaires with that clinical data that sits in the NHS to help us create a more holistic, fuller picture of this disease and the true impact it has on people's lives. So how have they been involved in the creation of Prostate Progress? Well, they've been involved really right from the start. You see, patients were involved in the development of Prostate Progress via our patient panel. But actually, even before that, before we even initiated the project, through scoping that we did and where we held a number of different focus groups and meetings with patients to get their input into the idea. But when we set up this patient panel, we set it up to ensure that it was really representative of the entire patient community, including those from underrepresented communities. We've collaborated with patients and NHS data professionals and others to ensure that Prostate Progress stores and shares data securely in a way that's acceptable to patients and meets their needs. And to ensure the appropriate design of the platform, we initiated 7 different what we call task and finish groups, which each one was designed to tackle a particular topic or area. So this included things like what the research priorities of Prostate Progress should be, what is the core clinical data set that is required for this research to take place, how are we going to manage the governance, the ethics, the consent model that we'll use, that you'll see when you join Prostate Progress. How we're going to go about creating a more sort of long-term sustainable model for this, and what does that technical infrastructure and architecture design look like to actually make all this work. So these task and finish groups comprised a mix of patients, clinicians, industry perspectives, and other experts. And they helped bring that wide expertise across different domains, whilst always ensuring that the patient perspective was at the forefront. Patients were also involved in the oversight and governance of Prostate Progress. So you see, the management of Prostate Progress is via a steering committee, and that's made up of a number of experts in the field and also patients, those with the lived experience. And they're all working together to guide Prostate Progress and ensure it meets the needs of those affected by prostate cancer in the most effective way possible. Patient participants are already driving Prostate Progress's impact by signing up and voluntarily sharing their data and taking part in this project. And we're really proud that we have already over 1,200 patients who've signed up and are taking part. And finally, access to Prostate Progress's data. Well, that's governed by a data access committee. And this committee reviews all researchers and research projects and the applications that they put in. And this access committee is made up of clinical experts and, of course, patients. Now, they'll only approve health-related research that's in line with the consent that participants have provided to make sure it's in the public good, it's aligned to Prostate Progress's objectives, and comes from qualified, accredited researchers from reputable organizations. Now, as I mentioned in the last webinar, there are both individual benefits as well as benefits to the wider prostate cancer community of your taking part in Prostate Progress. Personal benefits of taking part include helping researchers find better ways to treat and hopefully cure prostate cancer. And we hope this will benefit people with prostate cancer today, as well as future generations. We also hope that Prostate Progress is going to support you and your healthcare team to learn more about your prostate cancer over the long term and enable you to better treat and manage your own disease. And finally, you may also have the opportunity to receive personalized referrals to clinical trials and gain insights into medicines that are tailored to your needs based on unique information, your genetic information, environmental and lifestyle factors as well. And then there are wider benefits to the community too. So look, by taking part in Prostate Progress, you're giving your time and data for free to help researchers find better ways to diagnose and predict the progression of this disease. And this will help future generations of people who might be affected by prostate cancer. So, for example, your data may help researchers improve the accuracy of a diagnostic test that they're working on for prostate cancer, helping them identify early cases of prostate cancer, ensuring that we can find it sooner and deal with it more effectively. So this is really about helping those future generations, our sons, brothers, nephews, and friends. And also, by taking part in Prostate Progress, it will allow us to gather information about the whole population that's affected by prostate cancer. So you see, Prostate Progress can detect groups of people that have worse health outcomes and then generate evidence to help healthcare providers target resources more effectively towards those who need them most. Prostate Progress is also, we hope, going to help overcome some of the stigmas surrounding prostate cancer and support men to talk more about their health. See, stigma is considered to play quite a significant role in the lives of men who have prostate cancer and those who care for them. And we hope that Prostate Progress is going to contribute to a wider change in mindset amongst the prostate cancer community, helping them overcome taboos around historically stigmatized topics such as erectile dysfunction and incontinence. See, by sharing experiences and increasing awareness of the social and emotional impacts of prostate cancer, we hope Prostate Progress will encourage and support men to feel more comfortable speaking about their health. And of course, like all good research, there are things we don't know that we're going to learn yet, but we know that this will help in our wider understanding of the disease. So by taking part in Prostate Progress, you're going to help researchers unlock new discoveries and insights that we've not yet thought of. But what's really important is by taking part, you're going to help guide them to ask those right questions. And those of you who watched last week, you heard Professor Dan Brewer talking about really help researchers, hone in on what are the questions that matter most to patients, and that will guide researchers and the research they conduct. So you see, taking part in Prostate Progress is the quickest and best way to achieve this more hopeful future. We're now going to hear from Marcus Cumberbatch, who's a consultant urologist and surgeon from the NHS's Royal Hallamshire Hospital in Sheffield. He's going to be talking about why he believes prostate progress is important and how your taking part can help us change the future of prostate cancer.
My name's Marcus Cumberbatch. I'm a consultant urologist and surgeon in Sheffield. I also have a role chairing the local and regional cancer board meetings. I manage a lot of cancer of the prostate, as well as some other urological organs, kidney and bladder, for example. My personal background is I'm mixed African Caribbean and white English, and I have a family history of prostate cancer, making me have both personal and professional interest in the disease.
How do you think Prostate Progress will help ensure better outcomes for patients?
I think it's a very exciting future we have in cancer research in general, and prostate cancer being as as high up on the agenda as it is, and affecting as many men as it does, really gives a perfect opportunity to explore this. And so I think what we're going to see is the combination of patient-related outcomes, so what we feel as patients and how we feel our journey has gone, the subjectiveness around how we are living our lives, being blended with our biological data and our cancer-related information. And I think until now, a lot of researchers pigeonholed people into certain categories as a way of analyzing data, but we know that that's a bit of a folly exercise because no two people are the same, and we're moving into an era where we're going to be able to personalize and tailor both predictive models, but also treatments based on bespoke information obtained at each part of a patient's and person's life and diagnostic journey. And a platform such as Prostate Progress is going to really elevate that up onto sort of center stage and allow us to be able to do that on a big data, in a big data way. And we know from sort of computer modeling, etc., how important it is to have as much information as possible to generate kind of meaningful outputs. And when I look at how it might be for myself or my children later in this century, the idea that you can say, well, hey, look, you're from this part of the UK with this background information, and this is going to feed into a model that's going to have a look at your particular makeup, both in terms of culture, biology, and if you're diagnosed with this disease, this is the percentage chances of it going in this direction, and this is the success it's going to you're going to be met with certain treatments. That is such a powerful way to then be able to make decisions in the future. You know, it's sort of like putting the speedometer in a car suddenly and being able to negotiate the motorway with confidence. And that's kind of how we're looking at changing healthcare. And so I think I feel really excited about this, you know, in the future.
So it would not be right to discuss a project like this without, of course, acknowledging that there are, like all things in life, some potential risks of taking part. So at Prostate Cancer Research, we're committed to informing and empowering patients to get the right care. Now, while there are some risks involved in participating in Prostate Progress, we have implemented numerous measures to ensure that patients and their data are kept as safe as possible. Now, although very uncommon, there is, of course, a very small risk that if a security breach occurred, someone might access or use the data we have about you. This is a risk associated, of course, with all instances of data sharing that is not exclusive to Prostate Progress. One of the benefits of our working collaboratively with the NHS is their new secure data environments that they're putting in place have extremely high levels of data protection to try to minimize this happening. And later on in this webinar, I'm going to go into more detail about the processes we put in place to protect your data and ensure that this risk is minimized as much as possible. There may also, of course, be other risks that we don't yet know about. We take a lot of security precautions, but if serious new risks arise, we will be in touch as needed, and you can rest assured that we will do our best to minimize those and put in place the necessary protections to deal with these risks. And finally, of course, there's always a risk in participation in any research that may lead to participants in encountering new information that could raise concerns or cause worry. We obviously sincerely hope that's not the case, but if it does happen, we have many useful resources, information sources, and support that we can signpost to ensure that if these do arise, participants are well supported. It's now my pleasure to introduce Henry. So Henry is a member of Prostate Progress's patient panel, and his insights and inputs have been invaluable as we've developed this platform.
Hi, David. I'm a 58-year-old retired doctor. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2015 after just a health screening that included a PSA test, absolutely no symptoms, and the PSA came back raised. And I had surgery, robotic radical prostatectomy in March of 2016, which got my PSA down for one PSA test, but then it had returned, and I had salvage radiotherapy to the prostate bed in 2017. And that again got rid of my PSA until 4 years ago, when it started rising again. It's been rising very slowly since, and I've just had to start on hormone treatment because it's gone to a lymph node in my chest.
What role have patients played in the development and governance of Prostate Progress?
So I'm one of quite a few patients who are on the sort of steering committee, and we've been involved in working out what data will be sought and which particular questionnaires will be used to elicit that information. So there's a need to balance the thoroughness of those with a sort of ease of using them. We've been involved in sort of making sure the language is as acceptable as possible and as easy to be around. Questionnaires themselves can't be changed because they've been researched for validity in their exact form. So you can't change the questionnaires, but you can try and make everything else as inclusive and unoff-putting to minority groups as possible. One of the reasons that I was asked to be on the patient panel is that I'm a gay man, so I represent the LGBT plus community, and there's a diverse group of patients on it, and that is crucial for avoiding any kind of language or maybe jargon in particular that ends up unintentionally being a bit excluding or not making people feel that they were really included.
Why is it so important for others to join Prostate Progress?
It's crucial that us patients come together and support prostate progress by offering our data, answering the easy questions, time consuming, but definitely worth it. It's been carefully thought out to try and make it as easy as possible whilst covering all of the aspects that other patients, their friends and family, healthcare professionals and researchers might want to know about. So you'll be very much helping other people. Another little advantage for you is that it can help you know your story and rehearse your situation better to get used to thinking about it and knowing where you are in the journey. I think that's a small benefit to patients. And for members of smaller minority communities like LGBTQ plus people, the more of us who take part, the more we can be sure we're represented and we're not left out.
So now I'd like to talk about the processes that we put in place at Prostate Progress to safeguard your health data. We recognize, and this is one of the things that came out of the involvement and conversations we've had with patients, is that some people may feel rightly nervous about sharing their data. And I want to reassure you that we are committed to ensuring your privacy and security at all times and have developed a detailed approach to protecting your data. So we follow the 5 SAFEs framework of data handling. Now, this is a set of principles which enable data services to provide safe research access to data. And this framework follows the following 5 steps. 1 is safe people. So what that means is only trained and specifically accredited researchers can access Prostate Progress's data. 2 is safe projects. Data is only ever used for ethical and approved research with the potential for clear public benefit. Insurance companies, for example, will never be given access to your data. 3 is safe settings. So you see, access to data is only possible using secure technology systems. Data never leaves these secure data environments. And these are these highly secure computing environments that provide remote access to data. The 4th is safe data. So researchers who are approved and accredited only ever see and have access to data that's been depersonalized or de-identified to protect your privacy. And finally, safe outputs. So what this means is all research outputs are thoroughly checked to ensure that they cannot be used to identify participants. Now, all the information we collect about you will be kept encrypted, which means it will be protected and kept safe from unauthorized access. The data is stored according to strict security standards in UK-based data servers in line with UK data protection laws and regulations. So just to reiterate, your data will never leave these secure servers and will never be sent outside the UK. Now, your health-related data we hold will be depersonalized. And you may sometimes hear it called, I referred to also earlier, as de-identified, and these two words are pretty interchangeable. What this means is health data it involves removing your personal information, so your name, date of birth, NHS number, from that data, and it makes it extremely difficult to identify specific people when all that data is put into a much larger data set. And we do this through a process called pseudonymization, which I'm going to do my best to explain to you now. So pseudonymization is a way of disguising this personal information so that no one can single you out in this larger data set. So what happens is a unique marker is used in place of identifying information. And in this example here, you see a sort of a mix of numbers and letters to create a sort of 10-digit cipher, for example. This unique marker does not reveal an individual's identity, but helps distinguish them between different individuals in that larger data set. The original identifying information is then kept separate from that data set, and is not shared with any researchers or other organizations. Now, PCR will store certain personal identifiable data that you provide, for example, your name, date of birth, NHS number, and a limited number of trained staff at Prostate Progress and in the NHS will have access to these data. And the reason for that is, firstly, so that we can contact you, and secondly, so that we can link your health records with the other data we collect through the questionnaires that you respond to. And one of the key benefits of Prostate Progress is that ability to recontact you in the future and let you know about certain research and trials that may not be existing now, but maybe a year, 2 years, so 5 years down the line may begin, and it will allow us to be able to contact you very quickly because we'll know that you would be, for example, eligible for that particular trial. Or as we move into a world of more personalized medicine, that you might be eligible for a specific new medicine which has just been approved, and that will help you gain access to the right treatment much faster. But what I'd really like to reiterate is the following. Firstly, no external organization would ever be able to contact or identify you without your permission, explicit permission to do so. We will only ever allow access to your data for health research that is in the public good. We will never sell or provide your personal identifiable data for the purposes of advertising, and we'll never give your data, as I said earlier, to insurance companies. Your name and identifiable information will never be used when research from Prostate Progress is published and promoted. Your depersonalized data will only ever be used and accessed by approved, registered researchers. And as I said earlier, approval must be granted by our Data Access Committee, which follows a rigorous approval process and includes people with prostate cancer and clinical experts on. And finally, registered researchers will only be able to access this depersonalized data for their research in a highly secure online data storage system. They'll only be able to access your data for legitimate purposes, and they'll never be able to download or extract your data from this secure online system. So I also thought it'd be important to share some examples of where approved researchers may come from. This will include non-profit research organizations other than ourselves, which may include universities and, of course, other charities as well. Commercial organizations, for example, pharmaceutical companies when they're researching and developing new drugs or treatments, and technology companies that provide software or data analysis services. Branches of national government, such as Department of Health and Social Care and NHS England, may also be local authorities or primary care networks made up of GPs and community and social care and mental health services, as well as potentially integrated care systems as well. So these are examples of where approved researchers may come from. But as I said earlier, all research must still be approved by that Data Access Committee, who will review any applications for research and make sure it meets all those criteria I mentioned earlier. It's in the public good, from a reputable organization, et cetera, with all these different safeguards in place. So protecting your data really is very important to us. And data access is controlled by this independent Data Access Committee. We will always ensure that your identifiable data is only ever accessed by authorized team members for data linkage purposes and for recontacting you with your permission by authorized personnel. We put in place strict legal contracts and robust data security processes and standards in place to protect your data. So I just want to go into a bit more detail on this because I know this is important for some people. So the data you share with us via answering questionnaires on Prostate Progress, what we've called your personal experience data, will be securely stored in line with industry best practice standards. So we work with a reputable software supplier, which is the software that underpins Prostate Progress, called IQVIA, who have robust information security processes in place to guard and protect your data. And this follows industry standards and regulations, including High Trust, ISO 27700, COBIT, HIPAA, HITECH, and NIST. So this approach ensures a very high level of data protection, security, and confidentiality. And all the information processes take into account all UK data process legislation, as I mentioned earlier, as well as Human Rights Act of 1998 and the Freedom of Information Act of 2000. Now, your data is always kept securely encrypted, including when it's passed over to the NHS's secure data environment. It's encrypted using industry standard AES 256 encryption, and IQVIA regularly check and test security through their own vulnerability management processes. So this involves regular vulnerability and penetration testing that they conduct. So that covers your personal experience data you share with us. And as for your clinical data, well, Prostate Progress never actually holds that data. So by joining, what you're doing, as I mentioned earlier, is you're giving us permission to link to this data. But that data never leaves the NHS's secure data environment, so it stays there. And in fact, what happens then is, as I said, the information, the personal experience data is moved from our secure data environment into the NHS's secure data environment and is then linked up over there. And that's why we partnered with the NHS for this project. It means your clinical data always remains held and protected by the NHS, and all research takes place in those same secure data environments. Now, our final speaker today is a urology nurse specialist, Pauline Bagnall. Pauline has over 40 years of experience working on the NHS, and we're also really proud that Pauline works with us part-time at Prostate Cancer Research as well. So she's going to share with you her perspective from that of a clinical nurse specialist.
Hello, I'm Pauline. I'm a urology nurse specialist in the NHS. I've worked in the NHS for 45 years, and the last 30 years I've had a specialist interest in prostate cancer and working with people with prostate cancer. I also work for the Prostate Cancer Research as a clinical nurse specialist. I'm also a trustee for the British Association of Urology Nurses.
Where do you feel the most significant gaps exist in terms of information available to support prostate cancer patients effectively?
So I think we've got lots of information about what treatments are, what they entail, and what the side effects are. But we don't have lots of information about how people live their lives and cope with those side effects. We don't understand, or I don't understand exactly what it means to somebody who might even have just a little bit of incontinence after their treatment, or how they live with erectile dysfunction. And we need that information in order to help guide people through their treatment choices.
How do you think Prostate Progress will help ensure better outcomes for patients?
The Prostate Progress is going to collect information that's important to patients. Patients will complete the information themselves. They'll fill in what they want to fill in, and they'll tell us information that we don't always ask about at the moment. It'll also bring all that information into one place, because at the moment lots of people are gathering that information for their own studies, which are important. They bring important information as well, but actually having information from more people, from more diverse backgrounds and more detailed, is going to be important to us to, as I said already, support patients in guiding their treatment, but also finding out what's important to people. And then other people can use it. Researchers can use it to decide what's important to patients in terms of doing research. And funders of research will be able to say, right, actually this topic is important to patients, so we will divert our funds, research funds, to these areas. And maybe people who provide care and support for patients, for example, charities, they'll be able to draw from this information to make sure that their very hard-earned donations are used in areas that are more important to patients. And we know it's important to patients because patients will have told us that through Prostate Progress.
So just as a reminder, the third and final webinar in this series, which will take place next week, will cover some of the more practical questions about Prostate Progress, such as what joining Prostate Progress involves, why it's important that everyone gets involved. We'll go through the consent form that you're asked to complete, how you can withdraw should you ever wish to. And then we'll dive into what the questionnaires you're being asked to complete are and how you can change your communication preferences. And before we move on to questions, I'd like to point you in the direction of some resources that you might find helpful. So the first QR code on the top left will take you to Prostate Cancer Research's website, where you can learn all about PCR. The second QR code on the right-hand side is the 5 Safes framework that goes into further detail about this best practice around data security that I mentioned earlier. The QR code in the middle will take you to the info pool, which is our educational platform all about prostate cancer diagnosis, treatment, and care. And I particularly highlight this for anyone who's looking for information, advice, and support about their own prostate cancer diagnosis or treatment, because that's not something, unfortunately, I'm able to answer live here today, if you did have a question about that. And then the final QR code at the bottom is an organization called Understanding Patient Data. So this is an organization that's it's a hosted organization of the NHS in London. It's funded by Wellcome, the Medical Research Council, the National Institute for Health and Care Research, and NHS England. And what they do is they provide objective information about how patient data is used and bring the view of patients and the public to policymakers and data holders to ensure that data is being managed effectively and used in a way that's worthy of public trust. They have some really excellent resources, and I highly recommend them to anyone who's interested to learn more. Now, with that, I'd like to open up for questions. So I'm going to just move the questions across so I can see them. And I'm going to do my best to answer as many of these as I can. What I would also say is that if there are any questions that I can't get around to, when I end the webinar, there's a brief survey at the end, which I'd love for you to fill in, and there also is an opportunity to write in a question if you'd like there as well. So one of the questions asks, how time-consuming is taking part? So it's a great question. So the first step, we ask you to complete a questionnaire, and I'll go into this in more detail next week, but what's called my prostate cancer experience questionnaire. And what that does is that allows us to get an understanding of your journey so far. So, when you were diagnosed, what treatments you've had, that sort of thing. And that's a one-off questionnaire, and that allows us to understand the type of people who are taking part, as well as helping us to determine what questionnaires then are suitable for you in the future. After you've completed that, you're then invited to complete what's called the My Prostate Cancer Health Questionnaire. And that's split into either 3 or 4 parts, depending on where you are in your diagnosis, essentially. Once that's done, and that's whole process, from start to finish, could take, let's say, about half an hour, depending how detailed it is, from 20 minutes to maybe 40 minutes, depending on how much treatment you might have had and how detailed you go into that. Then what you're asked to do is come back and again, it depends on when you had treatment, but it might be every 6 months or every 12 months. If you had treatment more recently, the cadence of how frequently you're asked to come back is a bit more frequent in that first year, so that we can really see and build up that view of how your experience is changing over time. And so, for most people, it would be 1 or 2 times a year that they'd be asked to come back and complete another questionnaire. Now, what I'll say as well is that as part of this, and this goes on to another question from another gentleman, is that there will be opportunities, of course, as I said, with new research projects. It might be the case that the information that we have is not sufficient to help someone answer a research question. So there's the opportunity then for a researcher, if it's approved, to ask a specific set of questions, or maybe a new questionnaire. And what will then happen is you might receive an email saying, hi, there's this new research topic about X. Would you be interested in participating? There's no requirement to do so, but maybe it's something you'd be interested in, and you'll be invited to take part. And that then would be on a sort of ad hoc basis. So we endeavor to make this as avoiding too much time as possible. Trying to make it a bit lighter on the kind of the amount of time that is required of people, because we understand you're giving your time for free to take part. So we've tried to keep that to a minimum, but we're in the process of doing this. We worked again, as I said, with patients to really kind of adapt that and try to make sure it was acceptable to patients, and there was the kind of consensus across the patient panel that the sort of level of questions asked, the amount of questions asked, what was acceptable. So we've got a question. Someone saying they signed up for Prostate Progress and filled in the questionnaire. There didn't seem to be a way to add comments about personal experience. Will be the chance to do this in the future. So hopefully that might answer your question, as well as what Henry was saying. So the actual questionnaires themselves are based on the My Prostate Cancer Health questionnaires, are validated questionnaires. So what that means is they've been developed by researchers and they've been validated specifically, and so we can't change those questionnaires. But the reason why they're asked is because what it will allow us to do is then use that information to, for example, in an application to NICE, which is the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, which governs whether or not certain treatments are paid for in the NHS in England and Wales, or in the case of Scotland, it's the SMC. And these validated questionnaires are acceptable to them to then be used as evidence as to why a certain drug or treatment should be available in the NHS. So that's an example of where this data might be used and why it has to be done in this structured way. However, there will be future opportunities in these ad hoc other kind of questionnaires and surveys from researchers that might ask different questions. That will be, might invite you to take part in a focus group or one-on-one interview, and that will be other opportunities to share your experience as well, should you wish. Now, I also would like to add is this is really just the start. Prostate Progress is just launched. Our ambition is that over the kind of medium term, what we're also going to be doing is pulling in all sorts of kind of information that exists in all these different silos around the NHS to create this really rich structure and understanding from information that's coming out of clinical trials, imaging data, genetic data, histopathology data, and in pulling all that together will then help us create this really rich understanding of what it means to have prostate cancer. And within that as well, there'll be other opportunities for patient reported outcomes, measures, information, experience information to be shared as part of this. So this is really just kind of the start. The question here is asking, I assume the questionnaires are online. Yes, so at the moment, everything is being done online. There might be an opportunity in the future for some of them to be done offline, but to try and keep costs down at the moment. We sort of just launched this, and we don't have the ability to sort of do offline questionnaires and manage that process. So everything is online, and it's designed that can be done from a phone, a tablet, or your computer, and you can answer those questions. The site is sort of optimized for mobiles and tablets as well, so you can answer those. So hopefully, I understand that's not doesn't work for everyone, but hopefully for most people, and that allows us allows them to take part. There's a question around asking if you have prostate cancer, and if you need to have prostate cancer to take part. Yes, so at the moment, Prostate Progress is focused on people with a diagnosis of prostate cancer. The kind of follow-up to that question is, do you maybe need to intervene at an earlier stage? And thinking about sort of PSA thresholds, etc. So absolutely, that's a great point. What we're hopeful for is that there will be research that will go on to look at trying to see what some of the causes of prostate cancer might be, what some markers are, develop new diagnostic tests. There are lots of different ways that we'll be hoping to use Prostate Progress to enable us to better predict prostate cancer before before it is otherwise diagnosed, and from maybe a more public health perspective, working with other organizations and things like the biobank, thinking about how, from a public health perspective, you might be able to deal with prevention of prostate cancer as well. But yes, at the moment, Prostate Progress is only for people with a diagnosis of prostate cancer. And then I think there's probably got time for one more question given the time. So is there any intention to collect DNA samples in the future to enable the identification of genome markers? So at the moment, within Prostate Progress, there is no intention to collect samples. But as part of the kind of wider, in the NHS, there is increasingly the likelihood that genetic testing will be done as part of routine cancer care, and that I think is going to, increase. There is that intention to do that, and so what we hope to then be able to do is, in the same way that we will link that clinical data in the NHS to your personal experience data, link key parts of that genetic testing data and link it up to your clinical data and your personal experience data, and then through that be able to see, okay, someone's had this treatment, if they have this genetic markers, this treatment is more effective for them, this test is more effective for them, and so then be able to start to identify that, and then through that might be able to then kind of almost go sort of before that and say, well, we then know in the future people have these kind of genetic markers, we should test them with this test and etc. So there's a lot of work that can be done in that genetic space, and it's one of the really exciting parts of the future of prostate progress as well. Now, conscious of time, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone for joining us today. There is the QR code on the screen there for anyone who would like to sign up to Prostate Progress. But just I'd like to say a huge thank you for taking the time to join this webinar this evening. There's a brief survey right after this, which I'd appreciate if you do have a moment to fill in before you go. Thank you very much, and wish you a great rest of your evening.